And hello, welcome to another episode of the Wisdom to Win podcast. I am your host, Ray J. Johnson, and today I have with me this wonderful expert in sustainability, productivity for working moms. Now, I know that you all may be like, working moms. I thought Ray J talked about divorced women. Well, guess what? Some of them are still working. And some of them have had decades of marriage, and some of them have now divorced and are in their 50s. Well, I've got someone here today that's going to help you understand that change is a system that can be managed. Yeah, so let's get into it. This young woman that is with me today is the founder of Moms Who Leverage. And we're going to have all of the links in the description so you'll be able to check her out for sure. This is a program that helps working moms to eliminate mental load through the support of simple systems. Now, we already know we have a lot on our mind. So just imagine that we've got somebody to teach us how to manage the mental part of what it is that we deal with 24/7, whether we know it or not. Our minds are going like that 24/7. Listen, after she had three babies in less than 2 years, let's give her a hand clap for that. She saw a need for a more sustainable way to manage loads for working moms, and she's blended her expertise from a 15-year corporate consulting career in tech. Okay, in tech. Let's just let that sink in for a minute. With dynamic needs of working motherhood. Okay. She also has scaled major programs at companies like Microsoft and SAP and is certified in change management. That is a process, seriously. She's recognized the very tools that she used as a consultant and was highly applicable to scaling it in the home. Now, just to be able to take a system that works in the corporate arena, bring it into a domesticated place, and it works for you too, let me just go ahead to introduce to you for some and present to others, Miss Corina Sanchez. Welcome to the Wisdom to Win podcast. I feel like I have to say your name in a smoky tone. Corina
It's
Sanchez.
a written form, Corina Sanchez. Oh, Reggie, that was a wonderful introduction. Thank you. I'm so excited for this conversation.
Well, thank you for being here. Listen, I know you've been a keynote speaker and you've been featured in, now let's see if I can say this correct. Despierta America.
Despierta America, that's right.
I love it. And then Canvas Rebel. So tell us a little bit about your background, what you do, where you've been. And I'm real interested in this whole situation about three babies in less than 3 years. Let's
Yeah.
go.
Yeah. So, first off, thank you so much. What an honor to be here to share the story. And I really hope that the audience can walk away with something tangible that they can go out and look around and see, like, wow, okay, I see a path forward for getting a bit of my mental load in check and regaining some of my sanity. I had to learn this the hard way, which I will share here shortly. So, wow, my story, that saying that you can only make sense of things looking backwards, you can only connect the dots looking backwards. And in my case, that has very much played out. I myself was born to a single mom, was born in a super dangerous city at the time, Caracas, Venezuela. And I watched my mom figure it out alone. And she, like, if there is a person that was fiercely strong, dedicated, like, I'm just going to white knuckle my way through pretty much anything, that was my mom. But it wasn't sustainable. We moved to the US when I was 5, which was a huge change. Once again, she just kind of powered through it, but that doesn't mean that there wasn't, sign of collateral damage lurking in the background.
Now, did she speak English at all? Did you guys, or you had to learn?
Yeah, we
Or
learned.
English as a second language for you?
Yeah, so Spanish is my first language, and I learned English when I moved here and helped her, along the way. And the short of it is it was an enormous blessing to move here, but it came with a lot of disruption, a lot of change. Among that, over the years, my two younger brothers were born, and my first brother was diagnosed with autism when he was about 2. I was 7. Huge change. And another one of those changes that we weren't really prepared for. There wasn't necessarily like structure on what do you do with this diagnosis? How do you move forward? We figured it out, kind of as best as we could. And then 10 years later, my youngest brother's born. And we all had this like bated breath. And not from a place of rejection at all, from a place of how are we going to support? Like, how are we going to anticipate what's coming?
Mm-hmm.
His diagnosis came a bit later. He was a little bit older, but they both have autism. They both have autism to the point that they are right, quite dependent on my dad at this point.
So they're on a higher spectrum. They're at a higher functioning level, I guess I should say.
They're higher functioning, but they're not independent.
They're not independent. And it makes a difference because you do have some children or even adults that
Yeah.
are on that spectrum, but they're independent. And then there are some that are high but dependent. And so that's kind of the situation with your brothers. Am I in the right area right there?
Yeah, that's right. And with the spectrum, right? You never know like how the lived experience is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and as all of this is going, right? Like my parents were working to figure it out and I'm observing them. What does one do when you're given this, when you're served this deck of cards? My mom ultimately is diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer when I was pretty young. I was 20. My little brother was like 14. So an enormous disruption, an enormous change. But once again, we just power through. We just get through it. This is how we do things.
Mm-hmm.
My mom valiantly fought 10 years.
Wow.
And you would have thought like 10 years of someone going through this, we would have maybe taken a moment to recognize what would we do in the event that she is no longer here.
Mm-hmm.
We never did. That conversation never took place. We
Never
were on
took place. Wow.
base. And in hindsight, I think there was so much fear as to how that would have played out.
Mm-hmm.
Something we'll touch on here when it comes to systems is a good system can paint a picture in your mind. It brings clarity, it brings levity, but we're conditioned to think of it as something heavy and as something like extra work.
I
And
think you don't understand that everything is a system.
everything is a system.
Everything really is a system, and you're either operating with a good system or a poor system. I won't even really say bad. I'll just say that it's poor because it doesn't have all the pieces in place. And that's the erratic part of it, right? That's what makes you feel like you're all over the place.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like, and you as someone who's overcome major health hurdles, there is certainly an element of tenacity and grit and drive and willingness to overcome.
Yeah.
What we sometimes, though, underappreciate is what are the mechanics? Like, how does this look like on an everyday basis? Because if you have the support of a system to get through, in my mom's case, 10 years of
10
treatment,
years.
10 years at stage 4, like, it was aggressive
Yeah.
treatment.
I was stage 3 breast cancer survivor. Hallelujah. And it had actually spread to my lymph nodes. Lymph nodes are all over your body. So at stage 3, they kind of sort of already have a dim glimpse of what they think the small little bit of life you're gonna have is gonna look like. Stage 4, they've totally really given up on you at that point. And she sustained 10 years of this.
Years.
Oh my gosh. If you guys are just joining us, I am talking with Corina Sanchez, and we are talking about how to leverage systems in your life, not just so that you can function physically better, but especially mentally leveraging these systems so that you don't feel overwhelmed because everything is a system. And especially when you have something as devastating in your life as health changes and even death approaching, you came in at the right time because we're getting ready to get the juicy part of it. So, after all of this stuff has happened, you didn't have the conversation with your mom and your family, your brothers who you said are autistic and they're dependent, even though they're higher functioning. You guys did not have the conversation on what is life supposed to look like or going to look like after the glue that has held us together called mom is no longer here. What made you take your corporate mindset and training with leveraging systems and bring them into the domesticated space of moms?
Yeah,
Tell
yeah.
me, how did you transition that?
Well, so God has a sense of humor. So after going through what I thought was, and certainly was, the hardest chapter of my life, I became a mom myself. I had my first son, Augustine, 3 years after my mom passed. And honestly, it was relatively smooth sailing as far as having a child goes. But very shortly after, when he was a year old, we found out we were having twins.
Oh, wow.
And I was at the peak of my corporate career. My husband as well. My husband travels quite a bit for work. So
Mhm.
I immediately looked back on all of the patterns that I grew up with as to how we get through hard things. And it was the first time I realized, like, okay, I'm at my upper limit when it comes to my capacity. This is not something that I get to white knuckle my way through anymore. I am so over capacity that the only way out, the only way is through with intention. What does intention look like? Systems. I had seen a similar pattern when it comes to, let's say, a sales team reducing their personnel. They have less of a force to work with. They have a higher quota to work with. How do you make this happen?
Mhm.
Set up systems so they can scale. Make it easier for them to do their most impactful work, reach the most amount of customers with less input. The reason why I chose the name Moms Who Leverage is the concept of a lever. A lever implies that you have a small amount of lift here and a disproportionate
At the
impact on.
back end. So you have for those that are listening, you have a small amount in the front end of what you're doing, kind of like a seesaw. If you guys can imagine a seesaw that goes up and down, it has a point in the middle. So if you are equal weight as someone else, you're just balanced. But when you totter that, that's because someone is down below and you're up. And you're talking about that type of leverage where something down at the lower end that's helping to lift something up at the higher end.
100%. And I really love this imagery because if you think of a teeter-totter, or a seesaw rather, for it to work, you have to have equal weight on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
The fulcrum, that leverage point, is right in the middle. What I learned in the business world that I applied to my personal life after having three babies in less than 2 years, the closer the leverage point is to the point of action,
Okay.
the closer that you move that little triangle to where you're actually pressing down, the more you're able to lift. So you can have an unbalanced equation, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
because you've moved the fulcrum. And the fulcrum is the system.
That makes
So
sense. That makes a lot of sense.
to play it out a little bit more, that can look like front loading. Front loading, all it means is to do something ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
same amount of, like you're doing the same amount of work. Just that shift though of when it gets done creates a disproportionate lift. It makes it so much easier. You get so much more bang for your buck just based on something as simple as the timing.
Give us a quick example of what that would look like for a mom. A mom in a situation like you've got three children. You got a set of twins, you've got one that's not a twin. So you got three kids, and your husband is on the road working, and you've got all these activities going on. Maybe they're toddlers and school age. What does that example that you just gave of a leverage, how does that system work specifically in a particular detail?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So the first thing when it comes to building a system, it's got to have an impact. And what's an impact? What's a quick win? Where are you struggling? Where is life like just really sticky?
Mm-hmm.
And focus on that. So I say that because the biggest example that I have that I've seen with working moms is like getting out the door and meal.
Getting out the door. Oh my gosh. Yes, I remember that. Yes.
And to be honest, I feel like that even applies to adult life. Like if I
Mm-hmm.
think about when you're going to an airport, right? Like what is it about the just half an hour before a trip that or before we're supposed to leave that all of a sudden we remember all of these things that we were supposed to do, and it is a mad dash.
Yep.
This is what we do. And a good system helps you have clarity as to what needs to get done, going back to like a picture in your mind, so you can do it ahead of time. So how this plays out in my life, since I have to account for my needs and my children's needs, think of like the diaper bag. If your kids are a little bit older, this might be a memory from, earlier chapters in life. But imagine what it would be like to be like out and about and you don't have any diapers or you run out of wipes. I feel like that's the more common one. Like, oh my God, I have one wipe left. I really have like some cleanup situations to do here.
Mm-hmm.
Most people pack their diaper bag just before they leave the house. And they're going through a mental list. They're trying to remember, like, oh, I mean, do I need this? I don't know. And it's consuming an immense amount of energy as you're doing this, and you're entering into a frantic energy because you're
Mm-hmm.
trying to plan at the moment that you should be executing. What I do, I have a printout that lives in my diaper bag. It is succinct, super clear, and it gives me the exact list of things that are needed in that diaper bag so that anyone can fill it, not just me. It is everything that lives in my head, like immortalized on this piece of paper. So when we get home from an outing, like we went to the zoo on Sunday, when I came home that day, I looked at the list, refilled my diaper bag right then and there. I was tired. Like, I'll be honest, it's not necessarily like what I would wanted to do. But at this point, I have learned if I get ahead of this now, it's the same amount of effort. It's the same number of steps. But by doing it earlier, I know I can leave the house at a moment's notice and I'm covered. I've anticipated my own needs.
Right. And I like that part because if those of you that are listening or watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Um, think about when you were trying to get ready to do anything. And if you prepared the night before, when you got up the next day, it was just so smooth. Especially if you have high schoolers and they're in sports like my kids were. Where's my soccer shoes? Where's my this? Where's my uniform? Did you iron this? I can't find. All of that is so stressful to have to happen the day of and you're trying to get out the door versus if you do it the night before. And I didn't even realize I was operating within a system.
Mhm.
So it makes so much sense to be able to incorporate these things and for you to be able to take this from a corporate standpoint and put it into the home. How many moms have you been able to help with this system?
Oh, we just finished our 3-day event where we had about 40 moms join, and they were, oh my gosh, the feedback was incredible. I was so, you know what, like there's certain moments when you realize that you're really stepping into your life's work. and this was one of
Mm-hmm.
the it's so rare, I think, that people stop and slow down and think, how can I solve this problem that primarily impacts women and mothers?
Yes,
We
and I think especially for women that are divorced, because you're used to having that other system, we'll say, in place, and it kind of gives you that balance as we talked about earlier. Now it's more of you. And instead of having that smooth going up, it's like bam, you're just kind of like thrown up in the air. I think this makes so much sense for a mom who is divorced and to have to maybe share custody because the kids, you could still be 16, 17 years old and having to deal with a shared custody situation. You could have a college age kid that's now adult as far as the world is concerned, and it's not like trying to navigate that with younger children, but it's still a system that you have to incorporate so that things don't seem, "Oh, I'm so used to him being doing this, that, and the other thing. Now it's all on me," kind of thing. So I can see how this can help one to learn how to start navigating those new chapters in their lives because this is different. And I don't want to feel overwhelmed. I want a life that I desire and deserve beyond the divorce. I don't want that to define my system. I want to have a system that defines my life.
100%. The best descriptor that I could give to a system is that it's an extension of yourself. A system is just a consistent way of answering a frequently asked question, a frequently faced circumstance. If you know, for example, that your kids have football on Tuesday, Thursday, or basketball on Wednesday, whatever that rhythm is,
Mm-hmm.
there's a certain number of things that have to take place for that to go relatively smoothly.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the best things about implementing systems with your family is that you model to your kids what it looks like to prepare for something with intention. So that when then they go off to college, they're not only going with their education and all of the emotional support, but they're going with such a practical tool for how to get things done in a sustainable way. A system, a good system, an intentionally developed system carries the load for you, right? It's a way, and especially if you are divorced, you are suddenly facing a unbalanced load. You're taking on so much more than maybe what you've been accustomed to. It's so important to find a way to anticipate your own needs.
Mm-hmm.
I often saw my mom lived anticipating the needs of others, and no one really anticipated hers.
There. That's a word right there. And when you've been used to being the system for everyone else, that part of it does happen that no one is thinking because you've got them so systematically together that no one thinks that the system needs a system. Oh my gosh. And I'm so glad that we had this kind of conversation. This is a little different, but it needed to be had. One question that I did ask you is that if this was a master class, what would you call this master class? And you said you would call it How to Leverage to Lighten the Load. So, I think that everybody needs their load lightened. And we live in a society that is like quick, quick, fast, fast. Even people talk fast now. And I'm like, wait a minute, can you repeat that? Wait, what? Can you slow that down? No, it's not because I'm 61. I didn't hear what you said because you together. Slow down, take a breath, and repeat yourself. Now, I don't, and sometimes our kids, we have to ask our kids to do that. And I think we have to ask our mind to do that. Because one of the things that you and I discussed is that mental, system in the corporate world, I'll say even for entrepreneurs mean save yourself some time, energy, money. But I think in this case, it means save yourself some time, energy, and mental health. So that's what the M stands for here. And the key word today is intention. And I think that we are not as intentional. You've brought that up several times. If I had done the Andy Cohen thing and say every time we say this word here, intention, take a drink of coffee or some water, you probably would be hydrated for the rest of the day. Oh my gosh, Corina, before we end, could you please give us one little wisdom nugget that we can leave today with and knowing that we can do something to help transition ourselves today?
Yeah, so I'll leave you with this. The best teams I have either worked on or observed in professional sports that I've been a part of, the best teams are the ones where each player knows what they can count on others for and knows what others are counting on them for. That kind of clarity brings levity because you are taking on a reasonable amount. You're approaching it with intention. You're not trying to be all things to all people because that is a surefire way to burn out. So the message that I leave this wonderful audience is your needs are so valid, they're so important. And if you can make the time, slow down enough just to take a look at what do I need? How can I anticipate my own needs? How can I build a system around it? You will become that spark of a well-functioning team of everyone around you.
Well, that's it. That's the show. That's it. The links are going to be in the description box as usual. Hey, I love you to life and on purpose. And I'll see you on the other side, leveraging with intention. Wisdom to win. Let's do that together. Take care. Bye for now.